Alright, nothing like a bunch of distractions right when you're trying to get into the most difficult part of the knapping. So, let's see. I'm trying to remember where I was as far as what I had decided to do. What I'm doing is basically going down both sides and sending in flakes as I make it more narrow. But that last attempt to send a flake across just ended up going to the middle, and that was it. Which is not bad. It's difficult to remove lumps once it starts getting really thin, right? And that's one of the things that can happen when it's thin and there's no way to get it out unless you have a robust edge. I could probably slippery. I can probably come in from one of these nearby ridges, like this one, starting here. Let's see. I can abrade this one and send in a flake along this ridge to fan out and take out the middle there. As an example, we'll see. Okay. I remember where I was pretty much. I just trying to keep the flow going. I need to send in some big flakes here, so let me do that if I can. Well, it might be too soon. Yeah, I'll just make it more narrow first. All right. So I'll just zigzag it a little bit so it'll get more narrow. I'm being careful that I don't install step fractures near the edge. Now, I was saying earlier there's no better quality glass than bottle glass, and that's true. But with high quality materials, they tend to spoil you. And you slack off on preparation and planning, strategy, and tool maintenance. You tend to slack off on everything, and it'll come back and bite you. And you can be an experienced napper too, and it'll do the same thing. That's why it takes a little bit of time to get used to different materials. I'm just jumping into various materials right away, so what happens is I'm learning and adjusting on the fly during the videos in many cases, which gives you a kind of a different sense or a different perspective on the knapping. If I were to practice for a few days before every type of material, you would get a different impression of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and how skilled I'm doing it. Because with practice, you can develop a routine, a technique, or a strategy, or whatever, and then go right to it for the video. instead of having to experiment a little bit during the video. So I'm giving you a perspective that is from the point of view of adapting as I go, because I'm doing all kinds of different materials and not sticking with just one type. That was actually a pretty hard hit, but it didn't travel. Does it need a ridge to travel? It doesn't, but it helps. I don't need ridges through that original surface area to get the flakes to travel, but it helps, you know. A lot of times when there's no ridges, the flakes fan out a lot, and sometimes the energy is lost in the fanning out and not in the direct route. I took too much of the edge with that one. Almost reached the other side with that one. See, that fanned out quite a bit. So you can see what I mean. Sometimes it's a good thing, but it's not when it doesn't reach the other side. So it didn't completely go. There's still some there. There's still some original surface right there. Right after it feathered out right here. I got about, I don't know, 30 seconds of an inch. It's still the original surface. There it is. Very close though. It'll eventually go away. When I have something like that, I'm not too worried about it. I'll eventually get that, probably without even trying. Probably as a consequence of thinning it just normally without even paying attention, I can get that out. But I'm slowly creeping up on that area. It's an island right now. Typically that's what happens. So either I do a flake from the base into that area or from one of the corners. Straight from the side works too, of course, but it's not as reliable for some reason. See, that's not good. All those hits. All right, let's see. It should go. I don't know why it's not going. Yeah, it's bouncing off. There it is. So I got that remnant. Most of it anyway. See how sneaky that is? It didn't quite get it all, but it's close enough. See how sneaky that is? There's still some remnant right there. All right. I turned the flaker so I get a spot that is nice and fresh on the steel. Yeah, it's not It's not gripping the edge. It feels like it is, but it's... There it goes. I think that got the rest of it. No, it didn't. There's still some left. There's still a triangle of it left here. Still a little triangle of the original surface right there. That side, that side, that side of the triangle. If I try shooting a flake in this way, I have a step fracture right there that'll stop it. There's a step fracture right there. I could try sending it in from over here, from this striking area in that way, but that's not very reliable. The most reliable would probably be somewhere from down here up into that area. Why? I don't know. But I got two avenues of attack, one from this side and one from this side to get that, if I want to. Nothing says I have to. Can't even tell. Now if it was ground down like on a slab, you could see that very clearly. I might also have an avenue of attack from right here, from this ridge into that area. But the closest one is from either this ridge or this ridge. But I'll wait till I get more narrow. All right. I'm gonna take down the edges a little bit. I'm going to regularize the edge. I said take down the edge. I'm going to regularize it, which reduces the edge, which is what take down means. Make it more narrow. I'm using a rounded flaker this time. The spatula tool was slipping a lot. The spatula tool was slipping a lot. I tried driving a flake in from here, but it didn't go very far. Yeah, you can get those with pressure. But with glass, you never know. You could snap the whole thing. You say, oh, I can generate plenty of pressure. Yeah, I can get that with a pressure flake. And then, tink, everything snaps and you got two pieces now. It's not a matter of developing enough pressure. It's where to apply the pressure and how much for the thinness that you have. Yeah, the Obsidian was easier to knap than this. This glass is very strong. Easier in terms of flakeability, not easier in terms of predictability. Just the flakes came off easier on the Obsidian than they're coming off from here. But these are more predictable when they do come off. Here's, I had the heater on. Yeah, I got cold very quickly. So before I turn the video on, I turn the heater on. Forgot to turn it off. Sorry about that. A lot of times also when I do the changing around of materials, I end up making points that are a little bit thicker than I normally would. Yeah, when I'm switching around materials, I tend to play it safe and go thicker rather than thinner. Instead of using my abrader, I'm just using the tip of the tool to dull it down a little bit so I can push off a flake without crushing it. In theory, I still got crushing though. Crushing and crushing. And step fracture. A little step fracture right there. But when you do it right, you shouldn't see any crushing anywhere. If you do it right. So yeah, I'm leaving it a little thick. I don't want to break. This is the only piece I have available in 5 minutes. I gotta look around for the rest of it. If I have it here. As far as bottle bottoms go. I don't want to snap this one because I can't just quickly grab another one. I'm going to thin down this tip. Sometimes I tell people it's best to do the tip last. Yeah, it probably is. But I don't always take my own advice. And I don't always do the right thing. Like that one just crushed right there. And that was a critical flake. If it hadn't have crushed, it probably would have taken off that bump right there. Yeah, so now I got to get the spatula tool out because this is crushing it too much. The rounded tool. This is a little wide for what I want, but I didn't want to take it down too far because then the maintenance on it will reduce it too fast and it'll be too narrow too fast. So I'll live with it being a little bit too wide for now. It's going to get narrow as far as the tool tip. This will get more narrow and will work better and better as it gets more and more narrow. Right now it's pretty wide and it doesn't really catch a small area. It catches a wider area, which means it'll crush areas to the side of where I'm trying to push. So it's good enough. Let me damage control this side too. I had to move the lights to get back in here. Or to leave and then get back in. Alright. It's not doing it. I'm doing the newbie mistakes. Crushing. Yeah, it's a little wonky, but oh well. So I just took a flake here and got rid of some of that crushing there, but it's still kind of steppy. So I'm going to take another flake across this ridge right here. Let me see, it's not pointing very well. There's another ridge right here. So I'm going to dull this spot here. Come on. I'm going to dull that spot right there. And right here. And run that ridge. I got some tape on my, I had some tape on my finger earlier. Yeah, okay. Why do I put tape on my fingers? Because when I'm doing yard work or whatever, I get stuff under my fingernail or my fingertip gets cracked. It's too late. This fingertip is already cracked. This process goes much faster if I'm just focused on it and not trying to explain it. Obviously. No. No. Maybe. Yeah, this... I'm not able to get past the step fracturing. Not with the wimpy little pressure flakes I'm doing. I'll have to blast through that or just leave it. See, I've got a step fracture here. Sometimes I can whittle it down from the sides, like a hit where I pushed right here, sent in a flake, but it stopped right there instead of continuing and taking part of that step with it. It just stopped because it was too wimpy of a pressure flake. I'm gonna have to do some more drastic percussion or whatever to get that flattened out. And stop pampering it. Yeah. All right. All right, so that was kind of a pain, but it worked out all right, I suppose. As long as I allow for a certain amount of mistakes, certain tolerances. So to speak. Come on. I hear a bunch of crushing. The tooltip must be dull. Or it's got a burr on it or something. Okay, the edge is good enough. I'm going to do the notching now. All right. Now comes the hard part. Yep. Okay. Just working on the symmetry. Symmetry enough. Symmetry enough. All right. Thinning flake. Doing on the other side, hopefully. Pushing inward. Passive pressure. Okay. Passive pressure means push on it until it releases by itself. Aggressive is when you force it to be released. Just passive, it'll snap by itself. Just keep adding pressure until it snaps. It'll surprise you, right? Just like pulling a trigger. Doesn't always work. I blew out the barb. So I gotta work on the symmetry. Now, why do I take a risk in doing those pressure flakes? Because I could crunch it all the way in, but then the risk of stalling becomes much greater. If all you're doing is crunching your way in, the chance of stalling is greater. You want a nice pop out every time. Okay, are they even? Kind of, sort of. This barb is lower on this side. All right, time to try out the new pressure flaker. The curved one. Let's see if I can advance the notches with the curved pressure flaker. By just pushing in on the bottom there. Okay. I don't like distractions, even though they're little bitty distractions on the glass poking me. I don't like any distractions when I'm doing this. They're already getting between me and the pad. And I can do some vertical pressure work with this flaker. So that's what I'll be trying to do that also in a minute. watch for the tip. Make sure that when I'm doing this, I don't break the tip off. Or don't break the tip off by dropping it. See, I'm going to advance these notches sloping upward if I can. I might have already stalled it. That was a nice pop out. Luckily it didn't take the barb off. But you can see how it's sloping upward. Now the other side. Alright, I shouldn't mess with it anymore. Let's just even it up and call it good. Alright. Alright, so the gloves are getting in the way a little bit again. And I don't need to worry too much about too much debitage while I'm finishing this up. So off with the gloves and we'll continue. Sometimes if it gets narrow enough, I can take care of some of the old issues around the edges. Like little step fractures here and there. They might disappear during this process of making it more symmetrical and narrow. There's no grinding involved. I'm just trying to sharpen it and make it symmetrical. Pushing straight down on the edge. So it cleaned up some of that area before that I was trying to be sneaky and eliminate step fractures. I'm going to make the tip more pointy. I was able to flatten it somewhat also with some of those flakes. Alright, so that's it. I think that's it. It's almost time for me to go in. Thin, very sharp barbs. The notches stalled a little bit, but as I get used to the glass, those pop outs become easier. The bottom of the notches are not all powdery for the most part. They are somewhat crushed, like right there. And a little bit of crushing right there. It's not too bad in the notch. It doesn't hurt it. It doesn't look clean, which is okay, I guess. I mean, it could look a little cleaner, but that's it. All right, so we lost about an eighth from the last time I measured, or I don't know. Okay. Alright, so in Ishii style, some of his original arrows found in the hiding place, the whatever he called that little hiding place, they were more narrow, and these notches were very narrow. This whole arrowhead was more narrow, and the notches were more narrow. But it was similar to this on those, and a very flat base. I guess I could flatten the base. So this is somewhat like an Ishii style glass arrowhead from his first batch of arrows that were found. Something hiding place. Yeah, he put a very flat, straight base on his of this style. Okay. And it was probably overall smaller. I did a reproduction of his, and they were smaller than this. And he made these out of window glass. Now, window glass is not easy to work. Well, modern window glass. It was different back in the day. So I've been told. More like bottle glass. The window glass back then was more like bottle glass. Probably a little bit thicker too. But yeah, there's some that Ishii made that were clear, that looked similar to this style, but more narrow, a little bit smaller overall, and the notches were very narrow. And he must have been doing those with a flattened piece of steel or something, those notches. Because at the time that he was making these, he did have access to metal. And when he made a lot of his arrowheads, he was using a steel nail pressure flaker when he was making them for the museum. All right, so let's see, the base is a little bit canted. Yeah, it's not perfectly aligned. It should be. I should take off more from this side. But it's all right. Okay. So that was a long video, but I took my time on it so I wouldn't break it. All right.